Okay, well, as Caroline says, I'm Rebecca Ferguson. I'm the third author on this paper. In fact, the majority of the work on this was done by Haiming Liu and Ronald Macintyre, but they couldn't get funding to come. So as I was presenting another paper, I agreed to present this. So I'm presenting somebody else's work in the majority here. I'm also it's very much work in progress. This is something we're very interested in at the Open University. We've made great progress towards it, but I'm not showing you anything finished here. So why are we interested in e-mentoring? Well, I don't know if you know about the Open University in the UK. We're the biggest university in the UK. We've got over 250,000 students at the moment, and they're all distance learners. In fact, 17,000 of them aren't even based in the UK. They're based internationally. So they don't meet each other, generally speaking. They generally speaking don't meet their lecturers or their tutors. So we're interested in anything that can help their experience. But also, from the point of view of our project, the Social Learn project, we're trying to build a social media platform tuned for learning to support our learners at the OU. And that's not just our formal learners, that's not just that 250,000, but that's all our informal learners, which may include a lot of the people in the room, and will certainly include a lot of your learners, because we've had 50 million downloads on iTunes, because we've had 600,000 views on YouTube, because you might have seen Frozen Planet on the television, or Bang Goes the Theory, or Child of Our Time, or listened to us on the radio. We've got a very extensive informal learning network, and Social Learn is trying to provide support for those learners. We've introduced it to do that. And so one of the things we're interested in doing is how we can provide mentoring support to people who are not only at a distance, but they're learning informally. That means they're not working with a course, they're not working with a syllabus, they're learning out of their own interests, they're setting their own goals, and they're choosing their own methods. For example, like you might be doing if you'd seen one of the visualization tools next door and thought, I'll go and learn about that. For example, when you want to teach yourself a new guitar chord, that's that sort of thing. You haven't got a tutor with you. What do you do? So we know from past work with OU students that even when not encouraged to do so by their course, they try and find themselves somebody to play a mentoring role. And they need a mentoring role to give them support, to give them ideas, to give them guidance, to sort of bounce ideas off. So this isn't necessarily an expert, but they're likely to find a friend or a relative or a work colleague. These are some quotes from students about the sort of things that they'd be doing with those mentors. So we were interested in how can we develop this for online learners. Oh, don't move, all right. So first of all, we looked at the literature, and we looked at the literature about classic mentoring models. And the classic mentoring model is an expert working with a novice, basically speaking. It's more complicated than that. It might be a formal or an informal relationship. It might be a professional relationship. You might have a mentor in your job when you start at a new university. And broadly speaking, there are three approaches to this. There's the competency model, where you, as the novice, do some work, and then with your mentor, the mentor assesses it with you, critiques it with you. Or you might do some reflective work, which is largely speaking what we found our students doing. So they talk things through with their mentor, and they reflect on how they might do it differently, they might do it better. Or there's the apprenticeship model where you see an expert working and where you try to emulate their practice. And these are all face-to-face models developed in that sort of location, not at a distance. And we found in all those that personal factors are very significant, that you don't just choose a mentor at random, and that you don't just mentor somebody at random. Some of these factors might be important to you. You know, you might want to speak the same language as the person that you're relating to. You might want to have similar interests. You might want specific demographics. You might want specific expertise. You might want a very strong expert-novice divide, or you might want to be peers who are working along together. So you can't really make those decisions about who's going to mentor you without knowing something about the people and the possibilities. And so that led us to think, if we're going to be providing this online, you've got to have some way of accessing that sort of information. So this is a view of our first iteration. This was an online mentoring tool which followed a fairly classic model. This is a reflective model which we developed with Ruth Deakin-Crick here at the University of Bristol, and it was developed by Thomas Ullman. You probably can't see it very well there, but on the left you select from a list of mentors. In the middle is a representation of your learning that you can discuss and manipulate. And on the right is a history of your conversation, and you can add a reflection. Now, we found that worked very well for what we wanted it to do, but we felt it doesn't really go far enough as a social media thing. It implied a committed relationship, which we felt, with our experience of social media, wasn't necessarily how we personally had gained that sort of experience. And you'll see it doesn't provide personal information. It's just a drop-down list of mentors. You can't really tell much about the mentors from that, so that we felt was a flaw there. And also we're very interested in learning analytics, and we thought it's not doing very much with learning analytics. It's got a diagram in the middle, but we could perhaps do more. So then we went back to our own practice and reflected on our own practice. These are some quotes from my Twitter stream recently about times when I thought I'd either been involved in small-scale mentoring or people had mentored me. And remember here, we're talking about mentoring in terms of support, ideas, guidance, being a sounding board. So we're not talking about the mentoring that we heard in the first presentation, which is much more the classic mentoring situation. But if we look at my Twitter stream, I'm providing people with resources, with reflections, with answers to questions. Down at the bottom, Patrick is providing me with references. So it's a two-way process. But if you look at that, it's multiple overlapping relationships. There's no implication that once I've sent David White one reference, I'm ever going to send him one again, or that he will reciprocate. There's also no implication that we're not going to know each other face to face. In fact, if I walked into a room, I would think 4 out of 5 of those people wouldn't recognize me and wouldn't say, oh yes, you look exactly like your Twitter icon. We're also interested in the analytics which go around this, because of course Twitter puts me in touch with other people in different ways and uses analytics and recommenders to do that. So it draws on shared interests from hashtags. It draws on contacts from the @ symbol. It allows me access to their profiles and their activity history so that I can make a judgment about those people and if they're, what they tell me is likely to be reliable. And then it gives me some who to follow recommendations. But of course, Twitter isn't a learning platform. It doesn't care if I learn from these people. I might be just going to discuss cups of coffee or what I saw at the cinema recently. So what would it mean if these were recommendations which were actually tuned for learning? Not just thinking about, can we produce an echo chamber for Rebecca, but what about if they were saying, can we challenge Rebecca? Where are some different views that she hasn't encountered before? So we were interested in how we could use analytics to allow people to expand their contacts, to contact relevant groups, not necessarily groups that they'd heard of before. They might be challenging groups. To see mentoring in action, and by mentoring I mean the sort of thing I was showing you just then, and identify opportunities to engage, give them easy ways in, so that they don't just lurk, that they get involved with this. In order to do that, we had another think about the literature. In this case, we had a think about social network analysis. And as many of you will know, probably even better than I do, we have strong links and weak links between us. So I've got strong links, perhaps with my relatives, my friends, my workmates, and then I've got weaker links with my friends of friends. And these might be latent. I might never have heard of the friends of friends. So we were interested in the role of mediating objects, mediating artifacts, to begin to activate and develop those links. So I've pulled something out of my recent Facebook feed here. I shared that rather difficult to look at picture, and it was picked up by a couple of people. It was picked up first of all by my daughter, who I would characterise as a strong tie, so I don't really need any stronger ties with her. But it was also picked up by Chris. Now, Chris is a work colleague, but I would count him as a weak tie. I only see Chris about once every 6 months or so. So it helped me to strengthen that. It gave me a contact to Chris where I could perhaps get in touch with him and relink with him. But it also put me in touch with latent ties. My daughter shared it with Keris. I've never met Keris. So there's a latent tie moving to become a weak tie. Chris shared it with work colleagues who I've never met. So you can see in just very small micro ways, ties were being created and they were being reinforced, and they were being done around an object. So we were interested in how we could use objects. Right. So we carried out a user study. We had, by this point, built a beta platform of Social Learn. That's Social Learn from a couple of years ago when we were still experimenting with it. We got 12 people in with it, and we got them interacting with it for an hour. We recorded everything they did on Camtasia. We carried out talk aloud protocols with them, recorded that, analysed that, then did follow-up interviews with them. So we were interested in how they were connecting with other people, and how they were wanting to connect with other people, because of course this was a beta version, not everything was in place. And what were they looking for? What was missing from the platform? And building on that, Ronald and Haiming came up with this model here. I can't claim any credit for this model here. This was about how people were connecting. Now they were connecting, as you would expect, with content, and they've used sort of logos to represent some of the common things you'd be doing there. They were connecting with people, but they were also connecting through content. So they were employing different actions, which we thought we could produce recommendations around. So some of the things we thought would feed into these analytics and these recommendations, we thought about the different actions which would be doing that. So over on the left here, I've got a current version of Social Learn. I've just sort of highlighted in red some of the actions that you can do that we thought we could pick up in analytics and begin to connect people to each other. The bookmarking and collecting, the commenting and the rating. And likewise, connecting with people. We've all got ways of connecting with people, of connecting them, of following them, friending them and helping them. And then the ways of connecting through content. So you can see the other people who've added to content, and you might be interested in those people. You can see who created the content you're interested in, who engaged with it in certain ways, and who evaluated it. And that gives you a strong way of linking with people, because not only are you seeing their name, you're seeing something they've done and something they're interested in. So this is a wireframe here that Haiming and Ronald have put together, which doesn't look very much like Social Learn as it does at the moment, but I put some arrows over on the right of ways which these analytics might come forward. You rated a pathway on programming, you might like this group. A user has asked a question that fits with your area of expertise. Now these are all small micro-level things, but these are ways that you can move forward, that you can engage with other people, and that you can engage with them in a supportive way, that you can do micro-mentoring. So this is what we are aiming to build into our platform at the moment, and also into not only into the Social Learn platform, but also into a toolbar that you can take across the web with you. And if you enable the facility, you could begin to receive these on different sites if you wanted to. So as I say, at this stage, it's fairly theoretical, it's wireframes, it's the next phase of development. I thought some of the key take-homes from this were that there are different ways of mentoring in social media. That's not to say classic mentoring isn't still relevant to learners, but there are other ways of doing it, that you can have these multiple micro-relationships. There's a way of doing it which is open and freely available, because before I mentioned the apprenticeship model. Now you'd think you can't do the apprenticeship model online, but in fact we do. I'm a research fellow. I meet senior lecturers online, I meet subject experts online, I meet professors, and I see what they're doing and how they're conducting themselves. And I can begin to follow that apprenticeship model. And that's open and freely available. I don't have to give anything to those people, but I get a lot from them. And it doesn't require a face-to-face relationship. I think in the past we've always assumed that if you're having a mentor, you're going to meet with them, you're going to talk with them on the phone. You're at very least going to have an extensive email conversation. And this is another approach to it. We thought the key data was definitely about connections with people, as you would expect, but also that the connections with content and through content are important. And we can see the potential for the analytics here in helping to strengthen those links, in providing opportunities for mentoring, and in fact, in becoming a form of mentoring themselves, giving you a way of reflecting on what you've done and how the system sees you, in a way of giving you new ideas, of giving you support, and of giving you guidance. So that's the three of us on Social Learn. I'm very sorry Haiming and Ronald couldn't be here to present to you because I know they would have loved to, but I hope I've represented their work for you. Thanks. We have about 5 minutes for questions. No.
What I think is very interesting about your talk is highlighting yet another role. We often think of just the student and the teacher and then the administration, but sticking the mentor in here. But I'm also wondering if in what you've looked at, whether there's other roles as well. I know from other online environments, work by Montague, she finds something called learner leaders, the people who are the ones that keep a conversation going. So I'm just wondering if you've observed those, any comment about different kinds of roles people take on?
Yeah, we are interested in those different sort of roles that people might take on. We're at the moment trying to incorporate network analytics, social network analytics as well into Social Learn. So I'm not presenting about that here, but Beeka, who presented yesterday, is working as an intern on Social Learn. She's going to be looking at the people who play those sorts of roles, such as being a hub or a bridge between networks.
Thanks. I have a question. I was thinking about your work in relation to at-risk learners that are struggling with their college experience, reaching their goals. Do you think these informal mentoring relationships have potency with that population in particular, or just reactions to that concept?
I would certainly like to hope they have. We haven't got them up and running, so I can't produce any data to say yes they have or no they haven't. But one of the key things about Social Learn was that as a distance university, we've always had people registering for separate courses. So they do one course and then they go away and register for the next course. And there might be 6 weeks in between, there might be 2 years in between. Now for us as a university, those are students at risk because they might not return, they might not decide to complete a degree, they might think, well, that one course was enough. So certainly one of our motivations was to bring in that sort of at-risk student.
I wonder if you could comment a bit on disambiguating a simple QA exchange from a mentoring process, because it struck me that some of the examples you gave was someone asking a question and getting an answer. But when I think about what mentors do, they don't just give answers, and often they don't give answers. They explore why do you have that question? Why do you think it's interesting? What might you do with it? So I'm just wondering how, if this is more of a QA kind of thing, or is it a sort of richer, as it develops and goes on, would you see it become richer in that kind of way for mentoring process?
Okay, I think one of the reasons it appears that way is because I haven't got data from Social Learn to show you. I was showing you some Twitter data there. In 140 characters, the depth of a mentoring relationship is going to be fairly small. Yes, we do see questioning and answering as being a part of that and the sharing resources, but we'd also like to build more reflective relationships, more ongoing relationships. Social Learn doesn't say stick to 140 characters. It lets you build long-term relationships within groups, and that's what we're hoping this would build towards.